Hi, hello, welcome to another episode of Man with a Mentor. I am the man, your host, Matthew Barnard, and you may be wondering what a show called Man with a Mentor may be about. And basically, it's about me finding the most interesting people I know and picking their brains to see how they went from being just a little nugget to the wonderful and successful career that they have now. And joining me today, I have someone that fits that bill. And his name is, there he is, Kevin Lee Miller. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing great, Matt. Such a pleasure to be here.
Do you always say the Lee? Because I feel like you're a Kevin Lee Miller. Like, it wouldn't make sense to say Kevin Miller.
I appreciate that. It is required by my Writers Guild membership because there was already a Kevin Miller, so I had to have something in there.
Kevin Lee Miller is an optioned WJ screenwriter whose scripts have been finalists or winners in major competitions like the Nicholl Fellowship and the Austin Film Festival. He's also an Emmy-nominated editor, producer, and director of TV specials, documentaries, and promos. How was all that? Sums it up?
It filled the empty hours.
Right. So tell me what you're doing now.
Presently I am running for a seat on the board of the WGA. I've gotten to that point in my career where it seemed really important to do everything and anything I can to pay back. I've been incredibly fortunate, incredibly lucky. I've had quite a share of mentors in my life, all of whom have changed my life.
Right.
So yeah, now I'm that guy.
Oh, yay. Well, let's talk about who those people are as we go along. But first, you're going to go back with me. And we're going to start when you were just, like I said, a little nugget, a little Kevin Lee. And and how was your growing up? What was it like? Where were you at? How did you first get that thought in your mind of, I think I want to work in entertainment or be a writer or producer or editor? Like, how did those things first come to your realization?
I didn't actually have a choice, and I'll explain what that means. I am talking to you from beautiful Los Angeles, California. I am sitting in an office that is about 5 miles from where I was born. So I'm a small town boy.
Oh.
Born and raised, and my parents were both actors. My dad was also a director and a writer. My mom was a producer. She was the first female DJ in Philadelphia. My dad replaced Marlon Brando on Broadway, and I remember Mama when Brando went on to Streetcar. Then they came out here and started an acting school, which they ran for 40 years. So I am an industry baby. I got my first acting gig when I was 18 months old, playing a little baby girl. I'm told I was very convincing. And then we just went from there. By the time I was 5, I was going out on auditions and getting commercial gigs and doing stuff like that. And then at a certain point, being the spoiled, petulant only child that I was, I turned to my parents and said, I don't get all the jobs I go out for. So my question is, if they didn't want me, why did they call me? And that was when my parents said, maybe you should take a break from acting.
You just thought you show up and they should just love you and give you any role that you're going for.
Isn't that the way it's supposed to work? I mean, this whole audition thing, why are you wasting my time? You can see what I look like. I'm brilliant. What's the big deal? Let's say I learned a lot between 5 and now about exactly what the realities of life are.
Right. What are the realities? Do you think it's a constant system that can prey on people's insecurities to a degree, or not? Like, don't you think there's a lot of people who take my class in this commercial acting class, and then go out for commercials, and that'll pay for your life for a while, and then you can start edging your way into other things, and there's this tunnel of hope that they put people in the car, and you kind of are trying to go through it, and yet only a small minority are going to make it out the other end of the tunnel. Do you think that there's a lot of people that are in that tunnel that probably should never be there, or or just
get out of the tunnel,
get out of the car?
You make an incredibly important point, Matt, and you used almost exactly the same words that my lovely wife does. She calls it the industry of hope. And whether it's filmmaking or writing or directing or acting or whatever it is, yes, there's a whole industry that I wouldn't say preys on people, because I think that's unfair. Having grown up with parents who ran an acting school, I was able to see how the sausages were made. I was on the inside, and I know how sincere their desire was to help people achieve this dream, this goal, this thing they wanted to do. One of the things they insisted on was my dad, being the ultimate deal maker, handler, found a way to get the folks at a couple of the major studios to allow them to use the sound stages at night to run the school. Because they felt like the whole point is you want to learn how to be a film or TV actor. That's why you're out here. And unless you get used to what it's like to be on a set in front of a camera, your training is not complete. You're never going to know. Right. So that was how realistic they wanted the training to be. And that's how deeply they believed in it. And, they churned out some success stories. But yeah, along the way, there were hundreds of people who perhaps weren't willing to do the work, or weren't necessarily inclined toward that particular pursuit, and they would give them a chance, and then at some point they would say, you may want to reconsider this. And that's the honest, important thing to do, is give people feedback, have it be an open dialogue.
Don't you think it takes a little bit of kind of column A and column B to make it? You have to be a savvy, business-minded person along with your creative side. So it's like a little bit of both. You got to have charisma and be able to sell yourself and push through out the other side, right? That's how I kind of feel about the people that make it. I think have enough of both that they don't wreck the car through the tunnel.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I could not agree with you more, Matt. It is absolutely a cocktail, that kind of success that we're talking about. I talked about, I quit acting for a while, and then I came back to it in my teens and early 20s, and then eventually moved from that into editing, because I've realized something. There are two kinds of actors. There are those who act to live, and there are those who live to act. And sadly, I was part of the first group. I didn't love it enough. And the people who can't not do it are the people who I think find the most success for exactly the reasons that you listed, Matt. That they're able to maintain the momentum, the focus. They continue to learn something new each and every day. And they have just the right amount of delusion to keep them going. So yeah, no, I agree with you. And those of us that were just looking at it as a job, which it is. I mean, there are all kinds of mid-level actors who nobody knows their name, but they work constantly, and they're just utility players, and they come in and they do their thing, and they go home and they make enough money to get by. But I don't know that that's what we're talking about here. Right. It's the people who actually really break through. And yeah, that's incredibly difficult to do. While the camera is unforgiving in terms of authenticity, realism, connection, charisma, all those other things, you can't fake it. Either you got all that stuff going or you don't.
Let's talk more about like your teenage years and transitioning to figuring out your education and what you wanted to do. And I mean, did you have an inroads because of parental things, so you knew the right steps to take, or did you still take missteps? You didn't do a misstep, Kevin Lee. You've been on a perfect path. No, tell me if there's like anything that looking back on might have been like, oh, I could have done that or should have done that, or this is what I did, and wow.
Yeah. Again, being an only brat, I was not perhaps as accepting of others as I could have been, and a little bit full of myself. And I could have been a little bit less of that, because there's so much to be learned from others. And again, I'm going to quote my dad for most of this, but a rolling stone gathers no moss, as my dad would say. A closed mouth gathers no feet. Mouth closed, ears open, that's when the learning happens. And yes, it's important to dialogue and talk and exchange ideas, but sometimes you just need to shut up.
Right.
And as you've seen from this interview, I'm not that good at that. My favorite sound is the sound of my own voice. But where I took it was, okay, I'm going to try this acting thing. It's the family business. Why not give it a shot? And my parents actually allowed me to teach classes. I was, teaching 20 and 30 and 40-year-olds how to act and direct when I was, 16. And that was a great experience. That was a wonderful learning experience of how do you help people? How do you support them? How do you make them be better at this thing that they really, really, really want to do? Mm. And that's what I've carried through my life, and I would like to imagine I've gotten better at it. Little more judgmental when I was a punk, but having been, have life kick my ass enough times, I feel a lot more supportive and like, man, mentors are everything.
Look, when you're on set, when you're working with the people that have like more power than you, what is the best way that you see to like behave to show them that you're interested, you want this career, but you're not like so eager that you're bugging the hell out of them? Like, how do you balance the getting them to like rehire you on their next project and grow to love you, and not isolate them by being so over the top with eagerness that they feel you've become a nuisance? Like, what's that balancing act like?
That is such a good question, Matt, and one I've been wrestling with most of my life. If I had to come up with an answer, it would be a problem solver. No matter what the situation is, look for where you can help make the people that you're working for make their lives a better, easier place. Mm-hmm. And that's about having the skills to do that. As actors, we were all told, whatever it is they ask you, if you can do it, the answer is yes. Can you ride a horse? Yes. Can you roller skate? Yes. Can you fly a plane? Yes. And then when you get the job, you go and you learn how to do it. All right. Lying, not always my favorite thing. But if you can back it up with actually, gathering the information and the skills that you need to back up what you've said you could do, that's all that really matters. Delivering is what really matters. Under promise and over deliver, and find the pain, the point of pain for whoever it is you're working for, and make the pain go away. And sometimes it's just about reading the room, isn't it? Mm. It's knowing when it's time to contribute and when it's time to sit back and just observe.
When you work on one project to another, do you keep in touch with the past people and say like, hey, I'm free, I don't have a gig for 4 months or 6 months or this year, or I did this, but now I'm wondering, you working on anything? Like, how do you keep in touch with people and make them remember you or rehire you? Is that a tough thing to do, or do you just keep moving from thing to thing and you don't really look back?
The magic of, what do they call it? Networking.
Oh,
Yes. What does that mean? Is it just me, or when somebody says the word networking, do you just throw up in your mouth a little bit?
a little bit. I kind of feel
A
like,
little
doesn't
bit.
that just mean talking to people and keeping in touch with them?
Sure does. That's exactly it, man. Matt, you just, in my opinion, you hit it right on the head. As soon as it becomes a separate process that you're doing to get work, it kind of falls flat for me. Now, again, everybody is their own, walking their own path, and I'm not saying there is only one way to do this, but for me, it has always had to. Networking needs to be a natural offshoot of somebody I like that I want to talk to anyway. And when I want to talk to them, I want to talk to them about them. I haven't been unemployed in 40 years.
Oh,
Um, I've just gone from job to job to job because I built enough of a reputation with enough people that when I was available, I got hired.
right.
And that is incredibly lucky. I don't think imagine for a moment I created that situation. I did, in that, going back to what I was talking about before, under promise, over deliver, solve problems, make people's lives easier. That has always been, to the point where there's this thing I used to do. When I was editing, I would be in the edit bay, actually doing my job, working on a show, with one ear always open to what was the conversation down the hallway, what storm might be brewing, what problem might be occurring, what were people talking about, what's the bigger picture. I was in and out at the same time, because I was always looking for, how can I help? I ended up working with people and on productions and for companies where I didn't do just one thing. I wasn't just the editor or just the writer or just the producer or just the director or just the post supervisor, or I did all of those things. And that meant that there was always something. Because what's the problem that writers have? You look at a movie, how many writers are there versus how many actors versus how many crew people? Generally there's, and I'm going to exaggerate for effect, but there's one writer, there's 36 actors, there's 100 crew people. So the competition for those slots is so much greater
Right.
that it became important for me in my career to be able to fill the gaps with other stuff. The people that I think find the greatest success, as I said, the actors who live to act, or the writers who live to write, the people who find that their lives are incredibly difficult when they're not creating. And in my, again, because I have many skills, in my practice as a clinical hypnotherapist, a lot of the creatives that I work with, often I find that they're having problems in their life because they're not creating. Because they were born to create, and when they are not expressing themselves creatively, things just get clogged up. And relationships go sideways, and health goes sideways, and all the other stuff that happens. And as soon as they get back to creating, everything starts to flow again. And I've seen it time and time again. And I think it's really interesting to imagine that, yeah, there are people on the planet who have to create to live.
Right.
And I think the other part of it is maybe that's all of us.
I think to a degree. I mean, I feel like everyone has their outlet, whether it's somebody stitching little sweaters for their Barbies, or you know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
I'm like,
Thank
that's
you.
creative, but it really, it
Yes.
is. That's their creative. It's not mine, but power to them.
And when we codify it and we decide it's only creativity if it's in the arts, or it's only creativity if you get paid for it, I think that's when we really drop the ball. And that's when things like cutting back on music programs in schools and cutting back on arts programs in schools becomes so dangerous for us as a society and as a culture. Because, wow, is it really important for humans to create?
I wanted to ask you about creating things. Do you think with streaming platforms that there's more avenues for creators and more avenues for different voices in the creative field? Or do you think that it's fractured the pay scale? Because one of the things that I think was happening that we could see at the Writers Guild was someone would get hired on a sitcom and they would be there from June through the next spring, March or April. And so they had 10 months. They knew they would be getting this much money. And now they're hired for a 6-episode season of a new streaming show that may or may not continue. And they want those scripts as fast as they can. And it's a much shorter window of like money and pay. And then they have to take that and then maybe out of work until they get the next one. So do you think it's helped people gain more opportunities, or do you think it's kind of stunted the ability to earn a yearly income that is that's sustainable for people trying to get in or stay in?
I will give you the answer. You know, you just gave me a multiple choice question.
Right.
I
There's like 4 questions in there, Kevin Lee.
I will give you the answer that drives my wife crazy. Yes. In other words, both. I think we are at an inflection point, aren't we? There is a huge upheaval in just about every aspect of our society, but certainly within the arts. And it goes back, a few decades, but it's been building, whether it started with, Napster or YouTube or streaming or AI or whatever the latest technological advancement. And we've been playing catch up ever since. And now it's really, really important, I think, for those in the creative industries to get out ahead of what's going on and try to anticipate. My crystal ball is broken, so there's only so much of the future I can see, but we are creatives. And now it's time for us to be creative in how to keep whatever the thing is. I'll go with screenwriting because we've been talking about the WGA. Make sure that it remains a viable career choice. And now I don't have all the answers to how to make that happen, but I know that business as usual is not going to get us there. I know that ignoring the encroachment of AI and imagining that we can put a leash on it is not the way to do that. One of the platforms in my campaign as a board member is to say, now is the time for us to look at how do we become the unparalleled experts in the use of AI as a positive tool, just like any other tool. How do we become the unparalleled experts so that everybody turns to us as WGA writers to solve their problem? You see how I'm trying to bring all the threads together, because it's all about problem solving. They've got the producers, distributors, streamers. They have a problem, and the problem is we need content, eyeballs, engagement. We need stickiness, and here's how we're trying to do it. But that doesn't fit the conventional business model that we as writers and the Guild is used to. So what's the new business model?
If you could have had one piece of advice as you were making your way through your career in the entertainment industry that you wish someone had told you, what do you think that piece of advice would be, and why didn't someone tell you?
Why they were sabotaging me. That's why they didn't tell me. Yeah, it's the kid getting a little too successful. That's
put the screws on him.
And it's true. It's drop the scarcity mindset would be one of them, because that gets you nowhere. It's there is enough out there for everybody. We don't have to be stabbing each other in the back to get there, although it often feels that way, and I get it. I've been there. I'm not being judgmental, but all that does is create negative energy and doesn't help me in any way. And having a much more positive mindset has generally, which again, that goes back to, yes, stay delusional. Yes, what would the piece of advice have been? How did I get from where I am to where I was to where I am? Because where I was an actor who couldn't pay the bills, who decided, okay, I'm going to try something else, anything else, became a PA at a production company, and I was vacuuming the rugs and cleaning the toilets. And then what? Then I got incredibly lucky. I saw a guy editing, and I would ask him if I could watch, and he was happily generous enough to say sure. And then occasionally when he'd be between stuff, we'd talk. And then he eventually said, kid, you don't look like a janitor. Do you want to learn to edit?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And he picked me out of the chorus line and gave me my career. And then he protected me those times when people were in a scarcity mindset and didn't feel like things were fair and this kid was getting too many opportunities. He protected me and made sure that I didn't get fired, because I was really close a couple of times, and not because I wasn't doing my job, but because I was threatening someone else's job.
Oh gosh.
And so I'm getting. Sorry if I'm getting off the point, but it's how can we create an environment where being a mentor and having a mentor are still respected things to do?
Exactly.
How can we encourage both ends of that? Because being a mentor, that's the phase of life I'm moving into. And I've done it most of my life because I always felt like I should be paying back. And 20 years after I almost got fired, there was a kid in a company where I was working, and I was at the top of the food chain, and he almost got fired, and I made sure he didn't. But being a mentor is on one side of it, and then having a mentor and allowing that relationship to happen. No, I don't know everything, and yes, I do need help, and I'm grateful for it, and willing to be open-minded to learn new things, and understand that if I let my insecurities drive me to behave like I know everything and I'm already as good as I'm ever going to get, and try to convince people of that, it's never going to happen.
Right. Oh my God, I love all that. I want to end right there, Kevin Lee Miller. Yeah, that's an amazing, I think, way of wrapping up this whole conversation about, being a mentor, having a mentor, trying to find a mentor. You just rolled all that together in a genius way. So I'll thank you for that, Kevin Lee Miller. And if people want to track you down, I don't know if you want them to, but how can people find out more about you? You don't want stalkers in the bushes, but do you want people to find out more about Kevin Lee Miller? How would they do that?
Well, again, going back to my name, Kevin Lee Miller, there are 21 other Kevin Millers on IMDb, but there's only one Kevin Lee Miller, right. and that's the best place to find me. Okay. And find out what I've done. And I believe my contact information is on there, and I'm always happy to hear from people. And stay connected. That's what all of this is about, is connection. That's why we create, isn't it? Is to create connection with our fellow humans, to share thoughts and ideas and feelings, so that we don't feel so darned alone.
True. All right. That's a beautiful way to end this. Thank you, Kevin Lee Miller, for being on my little show. Thank you for listening and or watching to this episode of Man with a Mentor. Bye.